everyone. Welcome to the book launch of The World is But a Broken Heart. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we begin, I would just like to acknowledge that we are meeting on Indigenous land. Signature Editions is located on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Cree, the Oji-Cree, the Dakota, and Dene peoples, and homeland of the Métis Nation. Before we get started, I just want to run through a couple of quick housekeeping notes. After the reading, we will be taking questions from the audience, so please leave any questions that you may have for Michael in the chat. We will also be doing a giveaway at the very end of the live stream. You will automatically be entered into the giveaway if you leave a question for Michael. So do make sure that you leave a question. We'll do a draw at the very end. And lastly, there are links for you to purchase a copy of The World is But a Broken Heart. And so those can be found in the description, and also they'll pop up in the chat whenever the book cover comes up on screen like this. And so, yes, please do make sure that you buy a copy of The World is But a Broken Heart. And so now, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest of honor this evening. So Michael Maitland is a versatile writer, producer, and director who began his career in Canada's Arctic, producing television programming and videos for Television North Canada and the government of the Northwest Territories, as well as the private sector. After a short stint with CBC North, Michael completed an MFA in screenwriting from York University before moving to Victoria, where he now currently works for the Ministry of Attorney General. And when he's not writing, he can be found riding his bike, swimming, or singing baritone for the Victoria Choral Choir. The World is But a Broken Heart is his first book. So welcome, Michael.
Well, thank you, Ashley. And the first thing I have to do is I really have to thank Signature Editions for taking a risk with this guy out on the West Coast. And your support has been incredible, and you really, the work behind publishing a book, I'm just amazed, just with the emails and everything else. The effort's crazy. There are a couple of other people I really have to acknowledge. John Barton. First of all, John, I hope that you're recovering and you're healthy again. And John Barton is a local poet and just an editor extraordinaire. And I truly, truly have to thank Diane and Ada and Judith and Elizabeth and Jillian and Deborah and Greg. I'm a member of for the last number of years when I began this project, I've been a member of a monthly writers group. And once a month or once every few months, when my script is there, I put on my steel armor and they go at me, and I'm still alive. And honestly, this book would not have been possible without their continued support. And I think there's a transition from me being focused on screenplays to becoming a narrative writer. And I can't thank you enough. I really can't thank you enough. So again, just thank you. It takes a village to create a book.
So Michael, are you wanting to start on the reading?
Yes, I'm just going to read some pages from The Rabbit. The Rabbit's significant because it was the first story of all of this of this collection that was published, and it was published in the Fiddle in the Fiddlehead, and made me say to myself, okay, so maybe there's something here. So this has been a particularly it's a difficult story, but it's one of my favorites. I'm just going to read the last few pages. Except for the occasional bird breaking its neck by flying into the living room window, Patrick had never seen something dying right before his eyes. A bird was one thing, but this was a rabbit, a real-life Bugs Bunny, something sweet and soft and furry that you were supposed to take home with you. The ground around them was splashed with rays of the sun coming through the trees. The only sound, other than the car engine, was the nattering of a couple of magpies waiting in the wings. The woman drew her fingers nervously across her lips. She closed her eyes, clearly at wit's end. Her hand shook as she patted her brow with the back of her hand. As she opened her eyes, she saw Patrick crouched alongside the car. It was as if he was intruding on something illicit between his father and the woman. Henry's eyes followed father and son froze. His father's glare confirmed that Patrick had entered a world he had no business being in. Then, as Patrick took a step towards, then as Henry took a step towards Patrick, the rabbit emitted the most awful sound Patrick had ever heard. It was a low, ear-piercing peep. Patrick dropped to his knees and stared at the O the rabbit had formed with its mouth. He watched in disbelief, swallowing back tears as the rabbit frantically dug its front claws into the ground, as this plaintive whine that pierced the woods, refracted off the leaves, bounced off the trees, this agonizing note that rang across the countryside forever and ever, this pleading to anyone or anything that the rabbit was hurt, in pain, and yes, dying. But above all, there was nothing anyone could do or anything that could be done. It was at that moment, as his father stared at him, that Patrick saw for the first time this man who killed for a living, a cold and casual indifference towards death, with the injured rabbit and this distraught woman being nothing more than an interruption to his Sunday drive. Behind that cold, angry glare was someone who had lost the ability to give life. What Patrick saw that Sunday in his father, he witnessed again 3 years later when his mother died. The death of a supposed loved one was nothing more than an inconvenience. The peeping stopped. The woman moaned, choking back tears. Patrick sensed that his father had been resigned to putting the rabbit out of its misery the moment she told him what had happened. Henry stared at the woman. He shook his head, curled his lower lip. "Go with," he began, looking at the lady. "Melinda," she stammered. "Go with Melinda," he ordered, turning to his son. "I'll be there in a few minutes." It was not the time to argue. Patrick followed Melinda to her car, waited at the top of the hill. Melinda bit her lower lip and watched as Patrick climbed into the passenger seat. She started up the Escort, reversing it around the Electra, careful not to hit the rabbit, before pulling a three-point turn and turning up the hill in the direction Henry and Patrick had come. As they passed, Patrick gazed at his father. He had pulled another cigarette from the pack and was smoking, staring down at the rabbit. Through the side view mirror, Patrick watched Patrick let the cigarette drop out of his hand and stub it out with his foot before turning to the Electra. He was not one to waste a smoke. "Poor thing just jumped out of the bush," Melinda explained as she drove up the hill. "There was nothing I could do." As she parked the car and turned off the motor, Patrick listened for the rumble of the electric engine. "It's a man's work, isn't it?" she said. "What?" "Killing." Her eyes were full of fear. "I guess so." Patrick knew it would be quick, clean. The revving of the Electra's engine confirmed that the car was moving towards its intended target. Patrick reached over and grabbed the radio knob. The woman gripped his hand, uncertain as to what he was about to do. She stared into his eyes and released her grip. "Sorry." Patrick turned the radio on low and stared out the window, tuning in with one ear to the latest hit from the tinny-sounding AM station while listening to the Electra with the other. As he stared across the farmer's field at the ripe, golden, waist-high grain wavering in the summer breeze, he cringed and closed his eyes. Imagined his father, his face somber, hunched over the steering wheel, country tunes rattling from the Electra's worn-out speakers as he aligned the driver's side tire with the rabbit. He saw the long face of the doomed rabbit, its eyes black with fear, its nose and ears twitching uncontrollably, its claws ripped red as it frantically dug into the oily road, as if it could somehow miraculously bury itself below ground level, safe from death. Yet unable to do anything but stare and claw and stare, as a ton of red steel and chrome crept towards it. The shifting of gears signaled that Henry was turning the car around, and a confirmation that he had completed what the woman had asked him to do. "Your dad? Is he a farmer?" "With a car like that, not likely." "What does he do for a living?" The engine returned to a steady idle. The time between the sound of the car door opening and closing told Patrick that his father had disposed of the rabbit in the ditch. The magpies let out a collective warble of delight. He works at the Tanner meatpacking plant. The woman cringed. He kills livestock as they come in, Patrick continued, with a feigned sense of pride. With a bolt gun. Patrick began to make a trigger with his thumb and forefinger. The woman put up her hand. She shook her head and turned away. He's good at it. Good at? She asked. Killing things. Patrick turned off the radio, climbed out of the car, and awaited his father's return.
Such a powerful story. So far there aren't any questions in the comments, so please do leave any questions that you have for Michael in the comments. I'm going to start off with a question of my own, though. So the world is but a broken heart. It spans a considerable amount of years from the first story to the last. Did you write those in kind of chronological order, or which was the first story that you wrote?
You know, that's a really interesting question, because this began as a screenplay, and I after graduate school, the nexus for this was known as the Gainers Meat Plant strike in Edmonton years ago, and that just really stuck with me. It was violent, made a lot of news. Working man versus Peter Pocklington, quite frankly. And what I did is I did a treatment hoping to write a screenplay, and I sent it to Showcase, and there was a polite thanks but no thanks. And so I wrote the screenplay just as an exercise, and I left it. And then a few years later, I went back to it, just tweak it, and then I wrote the short story for that. And then what happened was, it was almost like a stone being thrown into a pond, because the story sort of went from that way. So it wasn't linear. It was like, okay, what happens before and what happens after? And so no, it wasn't like a linear thing. I sort of combined that with, if you ever saw a Brad Pitt's breakout film, A River Runs Through It. And of course, because this is set in Edmonton, the river plays a big role in it. And then I read the book, and that's what gave me the idea of having the real father-son's conflict, and moving from there.
Okay, interesting. So it looks like we've got a couple of people in the chat talking about how they enjoyed the reading. We do have a question from Deb Nielsen. So Deb wants to know, is your book based on experiences in your life? Did the rabbit incident occur in your young years?
You know, there was one time where I was running not the actual killing, but seeing a woman on the side of the road, distraught, with a rabbit. That image did stick with me, and I expanded it from there. And it's interesting, a lot of these characters in this book are sort of composites from, nothing is really personal, but just snapshots of people that I've come across. Like Dale working on the oil rigs. I remember I did work oil rigs for a very short period of time, but I just remember this particular character on these oil rigs, and I sort of use that composite of him. But is this based on my experiences? Like, is this my story? No, it's just sort of all these little things that gathered over the years living in Edmonton, Alberta. I spent my summers in northern Alberta, and so I had a great sense as to the geography and life up there. But no, my mother's quite alive. She was not shot by an arrow.
Oh, well, that's good.
And I've never worked in a meat packing plant, so no. So my imagination, really, my imagination. Yeah.
So we have another question from Stephanie Aaron. So Stephanie wants to know, what sort of research did you have to do to be able to write this book? So things about like, how did you know what working at a meat packing plant was like if you had never worked
Ashley, I've
at
lost
one?
you. I'll go off and back on.
Okay,
Okay, so just bear with me.
just dealing with a little bit of some technical difficulties, but hopefully. Just wait for Michael to come back. This is a great opportunity for people to pop questions in the chat, though. So if you have any questions for Michael when he returns, do put them in the chat so that he can answer them when he gets back. We also have links to purchase The World is But a Broken Heart. So do be sure to purchase your copy of The World is But a Broken Heart. It's a wonderful book. Okay, Michael's back. Wonderful. There you go. Okay, you can hear me now, Michael?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. So Stephanie wants to know, what sort of research did you have to do to be able to write the book?
It's interesting because I hadn't lived in Edmonton for years. And I went back into the river valley, and I took a whole bunch of pictures of where, and I'm a little bit familiar with the neighborhoods of Edmonton. So I spent a couple of days there when I was visiting friends, and I just went back there because Edmonton's changed a lot. And I went back and I just tried to get a sense of Edmonton and sort of take me back in time. But I actually spent a fair bit of time Edmonton's known for its river valley, its paths, and its river valley. And so I spent just some days just wandering through there and just thinking and taking pictures. And that really helped put me back in that sort of place. So that was the research that I did. Yeah.
Interesting. So how did you find out about all of the experiences working in a meat packing plant and all of that then?
A lot of that really is just, I guess, a little bit more research, but a lot of it was just remembering more than anything the violence of the strike. It was so divisive in Edmonton, and that just stuck with me. As a sidebar, it was interesting because I was also living in Edmonton when those 13 miners were killed. So don't go around living because people get killed in explosions and things when I'm around. Bad, dark comedy. But it was just, just a little bit of, it's interesting how much you can get done in terms of research, in terms of, the bolt gun, the way that it works, and the way that the animals are processed. It's not a job I would like to have. How's that? You've got to be a certain person to work in a place like that. Definitely. And I think, I think too, is that the whole issue of blue collar, the struggles. Look at General Motors right now. Look at all this, the strikes and things where the working man, for lack of a better word, has always been up against. In Alberta, there's some stories that say that the Gainer strike really changed Alberta, not for the better, too. Changed labor in Alberta after that and forever. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we've got a question.
Do I have any real brothers?
Yes. Do you want? So Karen Hyan, who is
back in Ontario, and I come from Oshawa, which is a blue collar town, very big in terms of union. So and it was interesting because if you read the book, there's a passage where Dale's mother tells him, she says, find a nurse, find a teacher, find someone with a strong union behind them, so you'll have all those perks and stability and thing that you'll get with that. So find yourself a good woman that she's a nurse or a teacher, or the power of the unions.
So we have a question from Margaret McPherson.
I lost you again.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I don't know if it's my end or what.
I'm not sure.
Can you use sign language? Well, about your process. Do you write daily? You know what? I don't know if you hear this meow in the background, but that's my. Can you guys hear me? Ashley, can you hear me? Okay, so this cat is my. Oh, who wants to go outside? This cat is my, because I'm also a screenwriter and I've got a background in documentary filmmaking. So my cat is my 5 a.m. alarm clock. I usually sit down and I will have my coffee, read the paper, and I'll try to write for about an hour a day. And I pretty much do that every day. Sometimes I don't do a lot. Sometimes I just review things. But and I'm juggling several things right now. Karen, I'm 3/4 of the way through my next novel, first draft. It's just a discipline, and some days you get nothing done, and other days you just boom, it just all comes together. And I'm a firm believer that you just get it all out, and then you kind of, this is why I have my writers group, right? And just like tweak it, and they're very patient. Diane, order of occurrence, so yeah, that's my process. Oh, who's your favorite 80s dynasty? Well, of course, it was Messier, it was Gretzky, it was Curry, like that, Grant Fuhr and the Nets. That was the whole time. Yeah. Yeah. And Peter, I don't know if you've read the book, but there's a passage in the book where the father gets an Oilers, so the father gets an Oilers ticket for Christmas, and he's like over the moon. And of course, he ends up getting really drunk too. So, so yeah, it is set in that time span.
Are there any
You want me to
other?
try and kick back in, Ashley?
Yeah, maybe.
I'm sorry. Here, I'll be able to do it quicker. I don't know what here.
I'm not sure what's going on. Michael's just not able to hear me for some reason. But hopefully we'll be able to fix that again. Okay, here's Michael.
I'm curious. Can other people hear you, Ashley? Is it just me, or is it I'm just curious?
I believe other people can hear me.
Okay.
Let me know in
fault.
the comments if I'm not being able to be heard. But if there's any other questions, do pop them into the comment section. We've got a few people that have been entered for that giveaway. So just a reminder that if you leave a question, then you could win your copy of The World is But a Broken Heart.
If you're in Victoria, I'll sign it. Hey, come on. Come on.
Okay, it sounds like everybody can hear both of us, so that's good. It's just something wonky's going on where you aren't able to hear me. But okay, are there any questions that anybody has for Michael, or should we move on to the giveaway? Karen blames the cat for the technical difficulties. Cats can be mischievous creatures. I know the signature office cat has gotten into mischief in the past.
Okay, Karen's a cat person. Okay.
She's a cat and a dog, but the cat likes to break the printer. So are there any, we'll give people, oh, we've got another question from Stephanie. So Stephanie says, you said that your cat keeps you on schedule for writing, but does it inspire any of your writing?
Usually it prevents writing. Okay, so he's okay. The one that you've seen is Robin. I used to have another cat named Batman. I had Batman and Robin, and Batman died about a month ago. And Batman would just like a lot of cats, just sit right between the keyboard and the screen. And you can't disturb a cat. My God, no. So no. So yeah, and sometimes actually cats are good because you can contemplate while you're thinking of what you're going to write, and then you get nothing done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Who is? Oh.
Peter's trying to embarrass me with my lack of knowledge of hockey players. Wayne Gretzky, because that's one of the ones that I know the names of. We got a question from Shelby. So, how do you decide what you are going to write? Do you receive events that trigger ideas?
You know, it's interesting you say that. For example, so I'm writing my new book is called On Jupiter Island, and there are and I just and like there are just and same thing with short stories because I'm more of a short story writer, but there are just some things that just stick with me, and I go for, and I just like, oh, that looks interesting, and just go from there. So it really is much like, oh, okay, and then you just sort of write something down, and it just expands and expands, and you know, I'm very much a news freak, but I don't ever sort of, it's not that broad. I like to write things that are very personal, and you know, as I say, for example, like, you know, Secrets Out on Jupiter Island is really about Salt Spring Island. But I went there last summer, and I saw they have a little community radio station there, and I saw these guys just hanging out at the market on Saturday. And I had a brief radio career. I said, that's interesting. What do these guys do? And so now I've got this character for on Jupiter Island, and it's all about life on, don't say Salt Spring, on Jupiter Island. And it's a humor. It's both humorous, but it's also quite serious, and it involves things like global warming and da 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 da. So it's just something just piques my interest, and I go from there. Yeah.
Interesting. So we have two questions from John Barton. So the first one is, were there any writers of the short story that have influenced you?
Raymond Carver for sure. I really like the style of David Adams Richard. His, you know, everything of his is set in the Miramichi region. The one thing which I do is I subscribe to the New Yorker, and it's really hard just to keep up. But the short stories that come through there, they're just so different. There's always something there that keeps me interested. And so there's some, and Alice Munro to a degree, because again, she had a real strong sense of place and character. But there are three influences there, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, John's question about screenwriting, because screenwriting has been both difficult and in some ways easy, because people consistently say that I have really strong dialogue, and that comes from screenwriting, because screenwriting is very visual. And it's very visual. I remember Michael Maitland once saying that writing a book is like, and I think it's true, writing a book is like being a film editor, because you have to know when to cut. Mm-hmm. And I've really taken that to heart. So I really, in fact, the greatest difficulty is that I write very visually because I'm a screenwriter. And the transition, thank you to my writers group, has been a bit of a challenge, because it's always very visual, but you're always also moving over to the narrative. So I think it's been very influential in a very positive way. But there has been a transitional period for sure. Yeah. And I'm still writing screenplays.
Mm-hmm. So very similar, but Peter is asking how your time in documentary news affects how you write. So is there a difference, do you think, with the more documentary side versus just like pure screenwriting? Or,
you know, documentaries at the end of the day are still about telling a story.
Mm-hmm.
They're putting the pieces together on an issue, on a topic. So it's so it again, it involves a lot of research, and like anything else, you're going to end up with an hour-long documentary, but you're going to have 6, 8, 9 hours of footage and interviews, etc. So it's all a matter of, again, the process is, for me, is to get it out there and then massage it. And that's the same with documentary filmmaking. What you see on the screen is such a small amount compared to and that's the same with feature films too. I worked in Vancouver, in the film industry in Vancouver for years, and the amount that you see on the screen compared to what's actually shot, it's there's a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's all about finding that getting to the getting to what's the crux of that issue, that story, that character, that place, that time, and going from there. And Deb Nielsen, don't tell your sister about Jupiter Island being Salt Spring. It'll be pretty apparent.
And we have another question from Margaret. So she says that she loves the title, It Alone Inspires. How do you, as a writer, see your role in terms of moving a broken world towards healing?
This book itself, at the end of the day, it's all about redemption and love. That's what it's really all about. I don't know if you've seen the trailer, but it's really about, no matter what happens with these brothers, that at the end, even in when Dale, at the very end, there's still that connection. No matter where they've gone, there's still that connection, and I think that hopefully that conquers everything, in the sense that no matter what, that is still there. No matter how fragmented, dysfunctional families are, but you hope that there's the saying that blood is thicker than water type of thing, that there's something there that keeps them, hopefully keeps them together.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And we have another question from Stephanie. Do you have a favorite genre or medium for writing?
Not. It's one of my problems is that I work right across from the library at the Attorney General, and I'm always reviewing the New York Times reviews and the Globe and Mail reviews, and I get too many books and I can't read them all. So if it's just if it just appeals to me, whether it's whether it's humor, whether it's historical, just whatever kind of catches my attention, and I like to keep it. I'm usually writing, I usually have about 2 or 3 books on the go at one time. I never finish them all. So so not just whatever captures my attention. It's like wine. You walk down the aisle, that looks pretty good. Try that one. If you don't like it, it's only a $20 bottle of wine.
Yeah. Okay. Say last call for questions, and then we'll move on to the giveaway. Just a reminder that there are links to purchase the book in the description as well as the comment section. So please do purchase your copy of The World is But a Broken Heart, unless you get to win your copy of The World is But a Broken Heart.
And thank you all.
Yes. Thank you everyone for attending. This was a wonderful way to celebrate this very powerful collection of short stories. So I'm not seeing any other comments. Oh, we got one more question from Karen. So she says, what do you find easier, making documentaries about real people or writing imaginary characters?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. The nice thing about imaginary characters is that they don't give you a hard time. You don't have to go after them. I had one documentary, I won't say it a while ago, and it was just so difficult. It was just so difficult, but you're halfway through it and you can't do anything about it, right? At least imagination, all you can do is just, blame yourself. Your imagination doesn't talk back. Having said that, I've had a wonderful time with all of my documentaries. But just get my own little world and just off he goes. Michael's in the world, and go from there.
Yeah. Okay. If there are no other questions, let's do the giveaway then. So I've been writing names down and sticking them in a hat here. So I will pick out a name.
Do you want me to do that for you?
Yes.
Okay, there
Oh,
it is.
okay. And Margaret McPherson has won herself a free copy of The World is But a Broken Heart. So Margaret, do get in contact with us at Signature Editions. You can email us at marketing@signature-editions.com. We'll figure out how to send you your copy of The World is But a Broken Heart. Congratulations to Margaret, and thank you so much to everybody who left such wonderful questions this evening.
And Margaret, if you're in Victoria, I'll sign up for you.
Yeah, this was such a great evening. Lots of really interesting questions.
There's a little pitch there for those in Victoria. Russell Books is having a local authors night, which is nice of them. They're opening up, keeping the store open late. I think it's October 26th. It's a Thursday night, and they're featuring me. No, actually, about six local authors will be in the store that night. So if you have any friends that might be interested in some local authors, including me, just mark that in your calendars, and we'll go and maybe we'll see you then.
Yeah, be another fun night of books. So thank you so much for this wonderful reading and for all of your insightful answers, Michael. Karen's also mentioning that the book is on the BC ferries. Yes, if you happen to be on one of the ferries, check out the gift shop, and there are copies of The World is But a Broken Heart there that you can purchase. And you can also purchase it at any of your local independent bookstores, your Chapters, your Amazon, and also the Signature website. You can always get copies there. All the links to all of those good places are in the description, so do get your copy of The World is But a Broken Heart. Yes, thank you so much to everybody that attended. This was such a lovely evening. So thank you, and we hope that you have a very good night.
Again, thank you.
Bye.
Cheers.